So we feel it's much more equitable for our residents. But that'll be a change in the ordinance, and it'll be coming through the sewer committee recommendation.
Good.
Very good.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, very good. Let's move on to self-insurance, Tom.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The Self-Insurance Committee with Councilman Perry and myself met on Wednesday, July 20th. What we did was we reviewed fiscal year 21-22 budget status, and I wanted to update the council and the residents on the 21-20 end of year budget. The year end 30 ended the year $1.5 million over budget, and we've been talking about this for a while. Because of COVID, things slowed down, and this was more of a catch-up year. So this was fully expected, and I also wanted to update the council on the last 3 years so we can kind of put this 1 year in perspective. The fiscal year 2018-19 budget ended $740,000 under budget. The fiscal year 19-20 ended the year with $2.4 million under budget. And the fiscal year 2021 ended the year with $3.3 million under budget. So this is being self-insured. This is part of what happens. There's cycles that go up and down. So self-insurance is still carries, even at $1.5 million over, still carries a very healthy reserve and fund balance. Any questions on the actual results of fiscal year 22 before I continue?
Anyone? Thank you, Tom.
Next on the agenda, we went through some of the mandates that are effective for July 1st, 2022. We got an update from our health insurance consultant, and we are overall, we meet most of the mandates, and if not, we feel comfortable as to why we are not meeting them. So that was an interesting discussion. And lastly, we had a discussion on the fiscal year 22-23 budget and some of the cuts that were made and how to appropriately allocate the reduction to both the employees and the taxpayers. And that's a discussion that will continue at our meeting in September. That's all I had, unless Mr. Perry, I may have missed something or anything else.
No, we just had a discussion about potentially offsetting some of the premiums or salaries.
Right.
But other than that, that was all that we spoke about.
Yep.
But no action was taken on that yet.
Right. That's it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you so much.
Bless you.
Bless you. Library Building Committee, Jim?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure.
Madam Chair, over the last couple of months, the Library Building Committee has been working with the Library Board and the architect who has been working on blocking, what they call blocking layout, which is a functional layout of the space that's going to be provided in a new building. As everyone's pretty much aware, we can't build a 30,000 square foot library with the budget that we have. So I did want to reiterate that the referendum wasn't, the value at the referendum was an estimation of the cost of a 30,000 square foot library 3 years ago. So again, that budget is fixed. And as Jack had stated, which was, I think, very correctly, the goal here is to build a functional, flexible, modular library that can sustain programming down the road. It's not really for book storage. It recommended that we maybe wait to build the library, and the professionals that are involved are saying that there won't be a substantial reduction in the building costs anytime soon, and therefore waiting will only cost us more money to go forward in the future. So again, our goal is to provide usable, flexible space to allow for future programming expansion. We are looking at some other options to try to maximize the site. We are also meeting with the State Library Board on the 22nd to see if they'll work with us on a reduction of the size, because the grant was based on a square footage size that we obviously cannot build. So our architect is having a meeting with the State Library Board on the 22nd to see if the grant's even feasible at this point. And that's pretty much where we're at. Anybody have any specific questions?
Chris, come on.
Val, myself, and I know you, Vicky, also attended the meeting
Yeah.
with Jack this week. Mark, I look to you. I couldn't help but have memories back to serving on the middle. I served on the middle school building committee along with the town manager. And unfortunately, many of you may remember, we had to actually go back to referendum a second time. It was a little circumstance in that case. When the construction began, there was more remediation work, specifically with PCBs and asbestos behind the walls. We learned about vapor barrier, everything else more than we need to know. So there's a lot more remediation needed, but unanticipated when the project was approved. So I couldn't help but think back to what we went through with that, and I'm wondering if we maybe have a conversation. Do we do something similar to what we did with that? You can go back to referendum for additional funds potentially needed to get the project to where it needs to be, and what the voters ultimately asked for, and we sold through the marketing that we did leading up to the referendum. So I don't know who really to direct that to, but
Well, it's a policy decision, obviously, but there's only two ways you can get money into a past referendum. One is to go out to re-referendum, and the other is to actually put the money into an active budget, which means no one's going to want to do that. You can't put $4 million into a budget. You destroy an active budget. So the only option, if the policy decision of this board was that, there would be a re-referendum.
They need to think about things. There are things I know that members of the council, also in the community, we've been open to listen to suggestions. Our hands are tied because the referendum that we proposed at that time, we thought would be sufficient. But as all of us are experiencing this inflationary, unprecedented inflation, so too our town is as well. And so I would like very much for us to consider it, think about what we want to do. We can't certainly do it, tonight to do anything thorough. What breaks my heart in all of it, Chris, is that, we were so close, and when we really, we went from 12.5, 12,000,005, and then we thought certainly, the 17 would or 16.9 would be sufficient, but we're hearing that it is not. And so we will talk more about it, and let's look at things. Also, it'll give us a time of while doing their due diligence, me, the state, and the architect. It also will give us a time to hear from residents too. I was very happy to be there and listen to what the residents had to say, and the only way we can do this thing is together. So let's take one step at a time. There's no rush at this point in time. We're going to hear back from the building committee, and certainly from the state. And at that time, we can really sit down and talk about what we can do.
just to follow on that, what is the time frame, town attorney, town manager, if we wanted to do something for the referendum?
You have to get it 60 days before. You'd have to have the question done 60 days before. And the election this year is the November what? So 8th. So you'd have to have it by September 8th. There isn't going to be enough time.
So unfortunately, there may be a little bit of a time for, again, I'm not suggesting we do anything tonight, but if that is something that we want to pursue, we just need to be aware of that time frame.
I would really want to know the impact of and how high we would be looking at, because people are hurting right now with this inflation in their own pocketbook. And so I want to be very sensitive to that, because whatever we do, of course, has ramifications to the individuals that are paying their taxes and trying to make ends meet in their own homes. So,
Madam Chair.
let me finish. So we do need to be very mindful of it. I don't know if we can make this November, honestly, Chris. I really can't see a way to that. But I do want to continue to the conversation and see what we can do together. Okay, go ahead.
And I think just a couple things. I mean, I know you said you were on the middle school committee. You've had a lot of experience in that space. And of course, I know you even started the library project in your tenure as chair. And I probably, since that time, even the costs continue to go up, right? I also think that we need to let this meeting happen with the state to find out that 1 million, is that 1 million going to be available to the town, or do we need to include that in future discussion? So in order to have a full picture, to your point, we need to understand whether we have a million from the state or whether we have none, or maybe more, maybe not.
Madam Chair,
Yes?
I have a question. So maybe for Alex or for Mark, I'm not sure. What happens if it goes back to referendum and the referendum fails
It's only,
It fails.
it's only for additional money.
for additional funds?
We have the authority right now for $16.9 million.
Right.
And just so everybody understands, the $1 million from the state does not match $16.9 million. So a lot of people confuse that way. It does not. You could only spend $16.9 million, whether it's from the state or not.
Okay.
Madam
So-
Chair, I'm sorry, Jim.
I want everyone to consider that the reduction in size is between 6,000 and 8,000 square feet. The result will be 22 to 24,000 square feet of functional, thoughtfully laid out space. The meeting for Wednesday was to discuss whether or not the library staff thought they could reduce the collection size by 20 or 30%. So the architect had floor plans that required a lot of book space. And so in the last meeting that we had, we asked, is there any way we can maximize the usage space? And the architect said the only way you can do that is reducing the books. They came to that meeting last Wednesday with an alternate plan to say we don't need to reduce the collection size and we could pick up the extra space. So the architect that was hired is very professional at library layout and library of the future layout. And I'm confident that we'll get a library that's much more functional than we have right now and one that will be prepared to support us in the years ahead. So don't get on the size so much. The budget is substantial and we can deliver a really nice library. We just have to get together and make sure we do it right.
Madam
Thank you,
Chair,
Val. Yep.
Just a couple questions, because it is such an important issue, and, one that I hope that we can all work on together. So as far as the referendum, if we had to do a special referendum, it wouldn't have to be for November, correct? Similar to the golf course?
You do a special off referendum.
So that's a
Normally we don't do them in the
possibility.
winter, we do them in the spring. But yeah,
Or at any, as long as we're 60 days out.
Yeah.
Okay. And I guess, Jim, I don't know has the architect talked a little bit about, with the library becoming ADA accessible, are we losing space because of that? I mean, I know the minutes of the meeting when Tapé put their plans together said you're going to have 29 square, 1,000 square footage, but because it's ADA accessible now, you lose some space. Obviously, ADA accessible,
Please, everyone.
and so they had said minutes that you would lose maybe could be almost 3,000 square feet. So is that similar now? If we're going to be at a 24,000 square foot, but it's ADA accessible, are we kind of getting back to 21,000 square feet?
Well, at this current time, we don't have an action plan, so we're looking at possible layouts to give us the square footage. And the design was designed to know what utilities and the ADA, the elevator spaces are combined to reduce the footprint. Some of that ADA requirement is externally, so ramps to come into the building. And again, that's all part of the design. Is there a drop-off area that has no steps or bumps?
Right, but inside, I know we have to have more room between the shelving and things like that.
Yeah, but again, so the library of the future, as we see it, is less cumbersome with walls and rooms and hallways. So I wouldn't say you lose. I don't know that you lose specifically in an aisleway for bookcases. So when the architect does the layout of the floor planning, they know what the requirements are for width, and that's just automatically in there.
Right, okay, because I just think that's something, I mean, the size is definitely something that,
The goal is to maximize the usable space.
right, and make
The
it
best way
flexible.
possible.
Right, and
Yeah,
I understand flexible space and usable space. I just, 24,000 square feet it's small to me for a town our size and what we're looking to do. But as I said, I really hope that we can work on this together. We could look to the public for what they want to see and really take that into account, take into account what the architects are saying and the professionals.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Madam Chair?
Yes, okay.
Thank,
Jack?
thank you. So I echo a lot of the same concerns. Again, I started going to the info sessions probably back in 2018, probably 2018, and then I was honored to being on the planning. And again, we met with architects. We figured out the size that we needed. We ended up coming up with our community needing a bigger library than the 29,000-ish square feet that we recommended. But the price tag was like $22 million. We then were pressured to come up with a design for $12.5 million. We didn't know how to come up with it. Then we were told to come up with a design to do an addition, and I was against that because I'm like, that's like saying, hey, I'm going to build a garage. And it's not going to be big enough, and we're going to sell the taxpayers on an idea that's just not going to be appropriate. So again, I have huge concerns by reducing the size because I knocked on thousands of doors in the last election, and I was an advocate for the library, obviously, and we sold the town or the community a size of a library with certain amenities. So by us going backwards, yes, I understand that the town approved a dollar amount. At the same time, that dollar amount was tied to an idea or a design that we promised them. So I don't think cutting it, I know the designs were redone and I get all that, but there's a lot of work done on the planning stage where we spent money to try planning this out. So I feel like the building committee is going back into the planning stage where if that's the case, I think that we need to present to the community a referendum of the idea of what it is, and the voters have the ultimate decision. I'm a strong believer in the voters or the residents deciding certain things, and I don't think that us decreasing the size of the library is what they were anticipating. So I'm really against on decreasing size. I understand inflation. I'm directly affected within my own business of inflation. So I just think that, again, it would be doing a disservice to the community. Meeting with the state, we may lose $1 million. And again, the state had certain guidelines that we talked about on the planning committee level. So the guidelines we met. So by going, with that of reduction, I'd bet almost everything I have, we're going to lose $1 million from the state. So we will then maybe not even be 22 to 24,000. We'll be building a 21,000 square foot library that's ADA compliant, which is great. But at the same time, we now took on bonding that, I'll be paying back and all the residents for many years. And at the end of the day, if my name is anywhere associated with that, I'm going to make sure that I'm voicing what I feel is right. And I think this needs to go back to the residents.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Of course, that means, and I appreciate what you're saying, everybody's saying, I want a new library myself. But what it means is that the burden of that will be on the taxpayers. So all I'm saying is, I agree that what we need to do is to come up with a usable plan. It's too soon until we hear directly from the architects to see what they can do for us to make that decision. That's why we can't move quickly for November. But we're open, as Val said, let's work together. We want to do what's right for the town, but for the entire town, the best we can do. And, the last thing we need to do is to see this as some sort of, it's for the town. And so we have to remember the whole town. And that's one of the things that, yes, I want a new library. But when you're dealing with people who have difficulty paying for medication or putting food on their table for their family, who have lost their jobs, we're just coming through this recession, that we need to be mindful. We just can't wing it. We need to be mindful of all of that. That's all I'm saying. So absolutely. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak?
Just
Yes,
quickly
come
to
on.
that, because
Yep.
it just prompted something. So has there been talk, Jim, about simply pausing the project? I mean,
Yes.
well,
Yes, so-
just the point I just want to make, though, because just thinking about what's going on in our economic environment,
Right.
yes, things have looked bad, but things are starting to look better. I mean, the
Right.
gas prices were up at over $5 a gallon. Now they're creeping down to 3 something. Wages have been up. I guess what I'm trying to say is if we can pause a little bit and things can start to level out, it's not the doomsday that we don't want it to be. that could be the answer. And then the money that we do have, the 16.9 that we have, is going to get us a larger library.
And so we need to really hear from the architect at this point in time and see what they can produce for that. And then we'll discuss it. And in the meantime, we want to hear from the residents. I want to hear, that's why I was there. It was very important that we hear from the residents and open our ears also to other alternatives that might have come out. There's been some suggestions that I think are extremely valuable right now. And so let's keep our eyes open and our ears open, and we'll just continue. I'd like to move on.
Can I say one more thing, Madam
Yeah.
Chair? Thank you. So again, I echo all the same concerns, and I know when we were doing the budget, I echoed some concerns that, again, with inflation and what the rise in taxes like this year, our spending increase, but our mill rate didn't. I was talking to a resident today, and they were upset their car taxes went through the roof. So I agree that we need to watch all of our spending. And I've heard some rumors that, some people are recommending some of the money coming out of the reserves of our rainy day fund, which I don't think is the appropriate way of doing this project either, because you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. And I have some concerns next year what our mill rate will be and what our taxes will be for all residents based on all the inflation, because a lot of the town contracts are just starting to renew. So we have some old pricing with some of our vendors, and we're starting to see some of those new costs. So the Federal Reserve is trying their best to try to slow down inflation, but again, our economy is just we couldn't plan for this, but at the same time, I think
That's
we
what
need
we're
to
saying.
try
Very
planning
good.
for the best.
Okay. Thank you, Jack. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Okay, let's move on. Public Works.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We had our meeting on Wednesday, August 3rd. First thing, on the 27th of August, there's going to be another household hazardous product disposal. It'll happen in Bristol, though, this time. It's on a rotation with us, Burlington, and Bristol. And this one happens to be in Bristol. It's the 27th of August from 9 to 1. It's a Saturday. It's at the Public Works Garage on Vincent P. Kelly Road. It's right off of 229. The information is on the Southington website. If anyone needs to look that stuff up, they can. And that they take paint and oil and all the household hazardous items that the transportation does not take.
Very good. Very good. Thank you.
A little bit more. Yeah, a few
go
more
ahead.
things. Paving is happening. I know we see around town there are some disruptions with paving of roads. So everyone just be careful. Make sure we're giving town staff and the others that are paving the roads, give them lots of time and patience because they're, working on the roads. We got an email today from the town manager about a traffic study that's going to be happening for the bridge for the Route 10 and 322. We touched on that as well. Once that study happens, we'll have lots more information. I know Councilman Perry has some concerns about the bridge, so more to follow on that.
Do we have a date yet?
2 months.
Thank you.
They said it's going to take about 2 months.
Yep, 2 months to get an accurate traffic count, okay? The water department, Mr. Arndt spoke about it's been very dry, so it's mandatory now that we're doing odd even for watering for your lawns. Make sure that we're following that to ensure that we're conserving water. And he did talk about the repairs that were supposed to happen last night. They ran into some issues. I know Councilman Chaplinsky spoke about it earlier. So everything's back to good there. They were able to repair that road and construction's over, and hopefully it didn't affect too many businesses on Queen Street. But they ran into problems that just, the infrastructure is so old, you just don't know what they're going to find when they start working. And then lastly, later on tonight, we're going to be talking about the municipal parking lot in Plantsville. So more to follow on that. It's a couple of agenda items down.
Very good. Thank you.
Questions?
Any questions for open space?
Public Works, right?
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Public Works. I'm looking at open space next. Public Works.
Yes, Madam Chair, I have a question. Councilman Del Santo, I got an email from somebody, or actually a text message in regards to some tree removal at Rec Park near the exit. Do you know anything that's going on?
Yeah,
with that?
those were slated to come down last year, and we just ran out of time. So they're marked again. The majority of those trees are diseased, and there's becoming a hazard because the branches at the top are falling off, and they're falling down not only on the grass but on the parking lot as well. So Actually, Councilman Chaplinsky had some questions about it as well, because we saw a social media post about it. And we're going to put a plan in place, hopefully, to replace some trees. And we're going to reevaluate the amount of trees that are actually going to come down over there. So we'll reevaluate, but the ones that are dangerous do have to come down because they could pose a liability and a hazard.
If I could just comment on that as well, since you mentioned it. So I did have a discussion with the Public Works Director, and there's going to be a pause until they reassess exactly what needs to be done there, because they were, like you said, originally going to take them all down. When I had done a look myself before contacting the Public Works Director, it had seemed as though there's probably 3 to 5 completely dead trees in there. So, I mean, those have to come out. But do they all need to come out? And if they do all need to come out, do they need to come out this year? Because personally, I would like to see maybe same concern, Jack. If for some reason they all must come out, I'd like to see a plan to replant, and reestablish that area with something that's going to be equally as nice for the future. Because, this is a significant piece. And I also had asked the town manager and the Public Works Director to look at, what kind of process we could put in place when there is something significant like this that might impact the character of a park, or have a significant resource draw on this that gets approved at a board like, the Parks Board. How do we ensure that we get a look at that before it gets done? So I think that that's important, that we also consider that type of a process to ensure that we're all beating to the same drum. There's transparency. Not that there isn't transparency. I know that this was discussed at the Park Board.
Several park board
Yeah.
meetings.
So, how can we beef that up a little bit so that we ensure that there's communication across maybe more than one board?
Madam Chair, I have one more question. So the Route 322 bridge, I got that email, but for some reason I couldn't open up the file from my phone earlier today, so I'm going to have to try from a desktop. So you mentioned that it's a 2-month study. Is it going to take them 2 months? Is it going to delay the project? And again, I thought the study was already done, so are they just doing an updated
They're
study?
updating study, yeah. Well, we put the complaints that we met with several people on this board. When the director and I met with him 2 weeks ago or whatever it was, one of the things we mentioned was that we felt the information was not up to date. So they agreed to update the study, which is going to take about 2 months to do. And also we spoke with the fact, perfectly blunt, we said, is this an issue just to reduce a bridge, or is this, and the answer is absolutely not. This was designed not to just get rid of a bridge for liability purposes for the state. This was designed with the whole aspect in mind. So we did put forth some of the concerns we heard on the dais here.
Yeah. My only concern, like I stated several times, is that when I went to the original meeting, the presentation was, one, they were doing the design phase, kind of like the library. They realized that they could get away with without a bridge. It's like saying, hey, I could build a house without a garage. Of course you can. I don't think adding another light in Southington is going to, make our quality of life the best for our community. So again, I appreciate town staff and everybody staying on the state, because again, we pay tens of thousands, everyone pays thousands of dollars in taxes to the state. And this is our opportunity for the state to do the project the right way and not the cheapest way for our town. So thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may make a comment.
Yeah.
Just because I want to make sure that for those who might not be aware of the situation, that the comments are also put in context. First of all, the state did not say that they were doing this, Jack, in fairness. The state did not say they were doing this for it to be the cheapest solution. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. The state did provide traffic numbers. There was traffic count numbers that were provided with this, and they had an expert that did come, an engineer that did come and testify that based on those numbers, it made all the sense in the world to do this. Now, Jack, you did express interest in having those updated, because I think they were maybe 3 years old, just pre-pandemic. So I think that's what they're going through, and I don't think it's impacting the project schedule, because it's not planned to be done, in the next.
Won't impact the schedule because they
2024,
can't
right?
do the schedule until they get completed numbers anyway.
You said you didn't get a chance to read the email that came today, but there were still some pretty strong opinions from the DOT that were put on the record, such as there's a quality of life issue on Old Turnpike Road. Everybody who's going to 691 coming from the center of town is using Old Turnpike Road, which is a residential road primarily, and traversing that road to go to 691. There's a feeling that about 40% of that traffic, 40 to 45% of the traffic, will be alleviated once this gets done. There's also congestion issues on Norton Street, which is that that left-hand turn that goes down to Meriden Waterbury Turnpike by the bridge. And we all know that you can't see looking west. When you go to look right, it's a nightmare. And traffic queues up from Old Turnpike Road, where Tony's Pizza is. It queues up there. So pulling out is a real hazard. That would be eliminated. That whole path would be eliminated and replaced if this was all redone. So there was some qualifying information in there pre-study. The reason that they're waiting, I think I had heard, is that they're waiting for school to be back in to ensure that we capture the maximum, the appropriate traffic there, and that the study wasn't skewed that you were looking for, Jack. So I don't think it's going to impact the schedule. I think we're going to get an accurate look. And I think,
There's still, and that'll correct me if I'm wrong, I think you said there's still several years out
yeah.
on the project, so.
So
Yeah.
a few months I don't think it's going to be an issue. And then we'll get a real picture and decide whether it's something that, we need to have concern with or not.
Yeah. So, Madam Chair, so again, I went and attended their virtual meeting as well, and I know what I heard. And when they were doing the presentation, they mentioned that they were doing cost analysis and all that, and they mentioned the bridge removal at that point in time. So again, based on memory, that's what I remember. And again, the virtual meeting that they did, the presentation, the traffic study was different than what they originally stated. So they're mentioning different dates as traffic studies, and I have a concern of that because one of the things they stated during that virtual meeting was that there's less traffic now than pre-COVID. And Southington, I sit at lights every weekend. Southington's got lights everywhere, and there's just so much traffic. So, and then I was talking to a lot of residents in there, and one of them is an architect, and he told me, or stated to me, that the town of Southington should be hiring our own firm to look at the traffic study, because the original traffic study that Mark's office was given was super complex. And at that point in time, Mr. Shota stated that he was asking for it to be put in layman's terms so we can understand it. So I still think that, again, whatever they come up with, we need to do our own due diligence as a town, because DOT is asking for our opinion. And I just think that we just need to make sure that we're doing what's right for the town. Thank you.
Right. All set, everybody? Okay, we're moving on. Now we're going at the open space.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Very briefly,
I'm sorry, we can't take questions right now. You have an opportunity in a little, public communication. Well, I don't know. It depends how long the meeting goes for, but we'll get there. I promise you. Yeah, okay.
we have 6 more agenda items.
Yeah, we got some more stuff, so. Okay, we're moving as fast as we can. We do have a lot of stuff on the agenda tonight. Open space, excuse me, I have to move on the meeting. Open space, please, Paul?
Okay, so we're on open space. Very briefly, we had canceled the last meeting with the open space subcommittee, but I wanted to report out that we are still working on getting the scavenger hunt up and running in the next month. And we have 2 items that are on our agenda later for us to discuss, which is the repair to the roof of the ceiling and the roof of the barn that's there at the Leaf site, and also a Bird Street open space agreement, which we've agreed and will vote on this evening. So the town attorney, I think, will speak on both of those later on. Thank you, Madam Chair. Anything, Chris?
Any questions?
You mentioned the hoedown. I think that's it.
Very good. Thank you, everybody. No question. No questions for open space?
No questions.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the item 5, Town Manager's Report and Communications.
Thank you,
Please,
Madam
Mark.
Chair. The first item I have is the minutes of the Board of Finance. This was our close of the calendar year. Our fiscal year ended June 30th, as you know, so this closed the year. This gives the opportunity for both the Board of Education and the town to carry over funds for expenses that were incurred during last fiscal year but will now be paid for into the following fiscal year. So that's really the crux of the meeting. Let me just go over some of the numbers. We carried over for the 2019 fiscal year for the Board of Ed, the remaining $9,737. We carried over for fiscal year 2020 for the Board of Ed, $1,272,267. And we carried over for the 21 fiscal year, $1,011,789. For the current fiscal year that just closed, we won't know that number until September, and they've already established a carryover fund. It'll be funded when the Board of Ed comes to the Board of Finance and this board in September or October with the number.
We'll act on that. Yeah.
The town of Southington also carried over. The numbers are for the general government, $1,906,763. A massive number for animal control, $2,900. And the sewer fund, $1,358,635. The reason I read all of those, Madam Chair, is because it's required to read to you what we're carrying over,
Yeah, thank you.
not to waste anybody's time. Any questions on the Board of Finance?
Anyone? Hearing none, let's move on, Mark.
Okay, the next item
Madam
we had
Chair?
was
Oh,
touched.
excuse me, I'm sorry, Val.
Okay.
I'm just going to recuse myself on the Plansville
Plansville
parking lot.
Thank you so much, yep. We'll give you a chance.
Thank you, Councilwoman. The next item I had was touched upon by Mr. Del Santo. This, some time ago, you approved the lease for this particular property. This property is the Missile parking lot in Plansville. As you know, this was, goes back many years. The town set aside $300,000 to do off-street parking, as was promised by probably 3 councils ago, that when we did the downtown Plansville project, we promised to establish off-street parking because several of the on-street quote-unquote parking that was not really official parking is being removed. So in this particular case, the director is recommending Martin Lavero through the Easy IQC system for a total amount, including a 10% contingency of $228,477.62. The director is here if you have any questions.
Does anyone have any questions on that?
The next item
I would
comes,
just like to
Excuse
make
me
a,
one second, go ahead.
if I can, I'd just like to make a clarification. The Easy IQ system, for those who may not be aware, is a tool that's used to ensure that we get the lowest possible cost on these. We work together with some local communities through our association, through our CROG, to pool together volumes of work that communities do. And what we do is we use a third-party agency that helps us put out to bid the main things that we do, like roads, parking lots, roofs, et cetera. Put it out to bid I think it's every 2 years, and we get the lowest possible bid, and then we use that for when we have these type of projects that come up, so that we're not doing these quotations each and every time.
Very good.
the next item comes through the Open Space Committee. We replaced the roof on one of the barns over at the Leaf site, but before the roof got replaced, the ceiling was damaged. So that's also going to be requested to be repaired. Once again, we're asking for Millennium Builders of Rocky Hill with a 10% contingency of $14,185.72. This is going to come out of my townwide roof account, which is a capital account, which you know I fund with X number of $1,000s every year to make sure that we have money available for town roofs. Happy to answer any questions on that. Mr. Chaplinsky's here and the director's here if you have any questions.
Anyone have any questions? I hear none.
The next item I have comes from the sewer board. An exciting thing here, we'd like to hire Duke's Root Control so that we can go through the manholes and the pipes to make sure that the roots that are collecting in there are removed. It went out to bid. There were 3 bids. One was $218 per manhole. One was $150 per manhole. And Duke's Root Control, $145 per manhole. So the sewer committee and the sewer superintendent is recommending Duke's. The total amount is $41,120, and it'll be used, the sewer maintenance fund will be used for that purpose. Any questions?
Anyone? No?
Madam Chair, I do not need an executive session tonight, so it'll be a straight meeting.
Thank you very much. Any other questions for the town manager? Hearing none, let's move on. Our town attorney's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First item I have is school access sidewalks. As you may recall, this, I believe, started the last town council where residents were concerned with the cost and maintenance of school access sidewalks, which the town of Sullyton pays to maintain the actual concrete in the sidewalks, as well as pays to shovel, snow blow, sand, and salt those. The Public Works Department and the town council asked the Board of Ed to go back, do an audit, reassess what sidewalks are needed for the students, what sidewalks may no longer be needed. That was done. Mr. Romano on April 12th of this year sent a memo to the superintendent outlining 2 areas where he believed the sidewalks are no longer needed. One is a section of Mulberry Street from Old Turnpike Road to House 263. The other one is Parkview Drive. It's a dead-end road, and it, according to him, should have never been on the list at all. The Board of Ed voted to send a favorable recommendation to remove these 2 sections off of the town-supported school sidewalk lists. One issue is if you do vote to send them back to the prop and give the responsibility to the property owners who abut those sidewalks, the town's recommending that they are brought up and fixed so they're in really, really good shape. There's an outline of the costs analysis on that in your packets. The one thing I will highlight to you is it also will take away snow and ice liability from the town. Right now, the town is on the hook if someone slips and falls due to negligence on clearing the snow. This will remove 1.31 miles of liability to the town and shift that back on the homeowners to make sure that those sidewalks are cleared in the event of snow and ice. Any questions?
Anyone have any questions on that?
Just to add, Madam Chair, it would be approximately $73,150, which I would take out of the $500,000 sidewalk account.
Very good.
And the
Thank you.
Director of Public Works is here if there's any questions regarding the
The sidewalks? Yeah, anyone? Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Tom?
I just want to thank the Board of Ed and all the parties involved in researching this. This is an issue that takes a lot of work to research, and I think it should be researched not just once every 5 or 10 years, but it should really be reviewed every year. And for the public's knowledge, we're not doing this to save money or to just because we think it's the right. We're doing this because there's not kids walking to school on these roads. So why should these roads be paved or plowed by taxpayer money? So it's the appropriate thing to do. It's not going to be the popular thing to do for the residents on these streets, but we hope that people understand that this is a fair policy for all of the taxpayers of the town and for the safety of the children. So that's all. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Madam Chair, just a quick question.
Yes, go ahead.
Do we have a timeline, Alex? Are they going to start repairing the sidewalks immediately, or is this for this winter, next winter? I just wasn't sure.
Director?
Sorry, Nat.
See, it was worth coming out.
Depending on how the vote goes, when I would get the go ahead, we have a sidewalk contractor who we have on board, so he could start this fall. I'm not sure if he could complete all of it before this winter, but once I get the word, then I can get back to you with a better timeline.
Very good. Thank you, Annette. Chris?
Just an additional point, because this is going to be making a personal impact on these homeowners in those areas. I really think we've talked about this many times here. You brought it up tonight with the
Yes.
change in voter registration.
Yeah.
I think a personal communication needs to be
Yes.
sent to each homeowner.
I agree.
Not just a generic publication, but a personal notification to the homeowners so they
They
realize.
would understand that that is the elements of the whole
Absolutely.
issue. I agree, it's important.
So I just
That's
want
a
to
good
make certain
Yeah, we
and,
did-
and add that to the
We did
minutes.
that. We believe we did that when we did Mulberry Street. So
Yeah.
director's still here. So the director will do the same thing we did for Mulberry Street. We'll
Frost Street.
Sorry, Frost Street. We're doing it for Mulberry Street. We did for Frost Street, so we'll do the same thing.
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
good catch. Thanks, Annette. Very good.
If there's no other questions, my second item is the charter revision question. As you recall, you voted to open the charter and approved a report. The second part of the preparation to go in referendum is you also need to approve the actual question that will be on the ballot. I've worked with Clerk Larkin. We've developed the language, and that is in your packets for approval or discussion tonight. And the third item is the 824 proposed open space. As Councilman Chaplinsky alluded to, there's a contract on your packet where I want to thank Attorney Bedard putting this together, and the property owners who have agreed to sell the town some valuable open space. As before you approve it officially, it has to go to planning and zoning for them to give the sign off per state statute. And if they give a favorable recommendation, it'll come back to the town council for final action. And that concludes, Madam Chairman.
Because our next item would be public communication, I think we don't engage in conversation usually with public communication. We listen. However, Attorney Riccadone, I would like you just to give an update, if you could, for the Fair Rent Commission, because I think some folks have some questions about it here, and we will not be able to engage. So could you get us up to date on that, please?
Absolutely. So this past legislative session, the state of Connecticut and then the governor signed into law a new mandate for all towns that have 25,000 people or more to establish a fair rent commission by no later than July 1st, 2023. That's really all they said. There's no charging order. There's not a lot of guidance in the law. What the law states is that the commission should study, have hearings, and receive complaints. And the purpose the commission is to eliminate excessive rent charges. Point blank, I don't know how that's going to work. The law doesn't provide any actual teeth or authority to a commission. It also doesn't provide the size of the commission. So I spoke with the chairwoman. I briefed and I've given her some of my thoughts on the size of the commission, the people who possibly should be serving on the commission, and we've had a lot of discussion back and forth on how to make the commission as the best commission possible for the town of Southington for what our needs are. We've looked at several other towns who've had this in place, most notably Newington, and we're looking at some of their provisions and going to circulate them with the council so they can
Full council.
the full council. So for full transparency purposes, we're in the very, very preliminary stages. What I am asking for is the state for more guidance. If they're going to publish more guidance as far as how they interpret the new law, what the town's authorities will actually be. A lot of people have asked me, well, can we just unilaterally destroy someone's contract and say, you raise rent $500, we're making that go away? I don't believe that would be legal under the U.S. Constitution, but I don't know what the state of Connecticut is going to say. So we're really waiting for more guidance from them. And again, we have until July 1st, 2023. I don't know the size of the commission. I don't know if there's anybody that's required to be on it. I think the chairwoman actually said she wants renters to be on there, to have everybody to be on there.
Yeah, yeah.
So
And
that's
we'll
what I
all
can say.
discuss it. That was just my gut on that. But once we get all this, everything we can from the state, then we can start to really choose a commission that would fit Southington's needs, and we'll all be in.
Madam Chair?
Yes, do you have a question for the attorney?
Yes. So I guess, is it your opinion that we maybe start with some sort of commission? Because based on what you're stating, what the state is saying is that they pretty much want us to start listening to our residents first. And then mentioning the size of the town makes sense because, again, Southington is a big town. So I think, again, if we even start a commission now, so we could start listening to our residents, may be the right step in the right direction. Excuse me. And as the state gives more guidance, we can then add more people to the commission. That would be my recommendation.
That's exactly what we're doing. I'm glad we agree, Jack. Thank you. Okay, let's move on. This is public communication, and we're here to listen to your concern. We promise we're going to be respectful. We would ask of you the same thing. So when you come to the microphone, you'll have 5 minutes. Please give your name and address. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kenneth D. Delory, 43 Riverside Drive. Good evening, Madam Chairwoman and members of the council. Thank you for your service and commitment to Southington and for the opportunity to speak. As you remember, last month, myself and other residents submitted a petition to the council for creation of a fair rent commission per Connecticut Statute 22-30. Residents of Southington Sun are now part of a nationwide trend wherein real estate investment trusts and other institutional lenders are purchasing mobile home parks and other types of rental properties and driving up rents in markets across the country. As you can see from the turnout here tonight, residents are very concerned about future rent increases from our out-of-state corporate landlords. And we are looking to the town to create a neutral arbiter to turn to in future if future rent increases become so excessive, and that's the legal standard. Mr. Riccinelli, that's the legal standard that's in the statute. If rent increases become so excessive as to be harsh and unconscionable, and of course, a resident would then have to prove that before the Fair Rent Commission. Finally, we're looking for the council to make this a front burner issue, as many of our residents will begin receiving rent change notices for 2023 as early as November or December. So our residents here tonight are looking for you to create whatever study committee that you need to enact to get this moving. For the record, there are 24 towns in Connecticut of all stripes that have fair rent commissions now. They are all a little different. I understand the issue about not enough guidance from the state. However, there is a model fair rent statute. I was hoping to have it for you tonight. It's on a draft form, but it is, I would say within a week, I can get it to you. And it will have, I don't know the organization that's doing it. I don't know if CCM is on board or not, but it's coming.
Would you please make sure that we get a copy of that?
Absolutely. Can I email it to you?
You can,
Just email it to my office.
Okay.
And then I'll send it out to everybody.
All right. As soon as I have it, and you can't hold me to it, but I've seen it. It's out there. I don't know what they're waiting for. I've been hearing this ready for a couple, 3 weeks now. That's all I have. Again, several other municipalities are out there that have. You mentioned Newington, Weathersfield, Glastonbury, the bigger cities, the rural towns like Colchester, Clinton. They all have fair rent commissions for sometimes as long as 30 years. Also, I'm a member of the Connecticut DCP Mobile Manufactured Home Advisory Council, and I'm a president of the Connecticut Manufactured Homeowners Alliance. I have access to information that may help you if you need it, and I'd be happy to try to help in your deliberations on this issue. But we really need you to get moving on it because our residents, as you can tell, are the natives are restless.
we don't want to get them restless.
If you have any questions I can answer now, I'll try. Otherwise, I want to get home and watch my baseball game.
The Mets. The Mets.
Yeah, I haven't been able to root for the Mets in a long time.
Better than the Red Sox this year. Sorry.
Thank you very much. And please make sure we have his address. We have his information, right,
He's been
Kathy?
emailed me.
Riverside Drive.
And he's been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, I think we have a couple other residents.
I'm sure we do.
George LaBerge, 90 Applegate, Unit 141. Councilman Morale, thank you for doing a super job, and I appreciate all the efforts that you have put into this, all the schooling that you've gone through. And believe me, and I know all the flack you've taken.
George, you
in
need the
partic-
mic. They can't
I'm
hear you.
sorry.
You need the mic.
All the efforts that you put in, and maybe all the flack you've taken from me too. The library. With all the schooling I've had and everything else, there's one thing that sticks in my mind more than anything else. God gave me an intellect, a will, and a conscience. He gave me the right to choose. But with all that, the most important thing that I have to live by is to know the difference between right and wrong. And always have to be able to sit back and determine what's the right thing to do. I think it's clear tonight that it's been laid out that there's a lot of choices that goes on with this library. A lot of tough choices that are going to have to be made. I can't comment any further on this. I know a lot of people have been involved in this. There's a lot of emotions and a lot of hard fact feelings about this as well too. Good luck. That's all I can say to you. It's going to have to be well thought out. And with the thought going in mind, haste makes waste. And what do we want to do that's best for the future of this town as well too? Next thing I had was the surpluses that have come in. In history, they've all gone to the rainy day fund of this town. I hope that that's the case as well too this year. I say this because of what's going to be needed in the year 2023-24 coming up. The budget for the BOE, for the Board of Education, has got to be met. Look at the surplus they had for last year, $1 million. And they're crying. They're crying as always. think hard on those guys on there. Please, please, please. The taxpayers are always getting hit hard by them. The next thing I have is that I'm questioning about. There's two things that go hand in hand together. The softball field for the girls' high school. I drive past there every day. How did that come about? And along with that, something I mentioned at the last meeting was the redo of the football field at the high school. Now, I understand there's about at least $15 million involved for those two things. Is that going to be going to referendum? And I understand also that the girls' high school field was going to be part of that. And if so, why did we spend any money on that yet? And the last thing I have for tonight is that there were no future expenses that were supposed to be involved with for the base or for the football field. John Fontana, one of my dearest friends, who had no involvement with the football really, other than for his grandfather and for the helping out with the football patrons, worked hard to finance that field. I was involved with him with baseball for years and years and years. The town never had to spend $1 on baseball. The lights, the field, everything on baseball was paid for by the boosters. I stood out in December on cold Saturdays and Sundays putting those lights up. Musto came to help us install them. The ball players had to rake that field after every practice. I'll tell you right now, baseball never called for the town for any money at all during John's years. And now it's a shame that he had to be the one, a baseball man, to go out and raise the money. John's dead now. I'll tell you this. John was the most true Christian man I ever knew in this town, along with Jimmy Senich.
George, I don't know if you heard the bell went off.
Okay.
You have your 5 minutes.
The
Thank
rest of
you, George.
people, thanks. But,
Thank you very much.
with the library and everything else, try hard, think hard. And think with your hearts, think with your mind, think of what the guy upstairs wants you to do. Thank you.
George.
Hi, I'm Margaret Bobman, 20 Pine Grove, Southington. I'm going to keep it short. I just wanted to stop and say thank you to every single one of you. I can't imagine having to do your job in front of a group like this, so thank you very much. And I also want to add to Kevin. You go by Dave at home, so Dave, we call him David, but officially Kevin. I just want to add to his plea that we make this a front burner issue. This is an important thing. A lot of people who are in fact fixed incomes can't afford big increases. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Diane Schutz. I live on Pond Mill Road in Plantsville for 45 years. I'm here tonight to ask you to please consider opening the town library on Saturday in the summer. I have thought about this for years. I realize that the reason you haven't had it open is either tradition to save money or to save money. Yes, you would probably need to hire a couple of part-time employees to turn the lights on. As far as the air conditioning, that has to be on anyway because of the books. As for tradition goes, I know that in 1950, there was usually a parent home during the summer with the children. And they were able to go to the library. They didn't need it open. It is not 1950 anymore. And I spent about 10 minutes of research, and found to look at libraries, and this is what I found. Cheshire is open on Saturday. Wolcott Library is open on Saturday. Wallingford Library is open on Saturday. The New Britain Library is open on Saturday. The Plainville Library isn't, just to be fair. Most of the ones open on Saturday are on reduced hours, but at least they have made the libraries available to the people who work and the children on the weekend. It is so important to foster a love of reading in children and should be year-round, not just during the school year. I very much appreciate fiscal conservatism and know the importance of fire and police and hope to never use them. And I do appreciate my street being plowed in the winter. The quality of life in a town should also be important. There are two places in this town, besides Music on the Green, that you can enjoy for free: the parks and the library. The reason I'm finally standing up here tonight is that this summer has been very hot. I don't think more than half the residents in Southington have central air conditioning. I know I don't. So the town, and rightfully so, has designated 4 cooling locations: the police station, the Y, the Calendar House, and the library. Only the police station and the Y are open on Saturday. Both, I assume, have limited seating. Since the weather pattern, if predictions are correct, will continue in the coming year, at the very least, the library, which has a lot of seating and also has games for the children and computers, should be open at least from 11 to 3:30, 12 to 4, during the heat of the day. Please consider my proposal. Of all the people I have mentioned this to, which is considerable, I have yet to find one person that doesn't agree. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Alicia Novi, 41 Hill Street in Southington. I just want to make a few quick remarks on the charter revisions that are being proposed tonight. And pretty much they boil down to 2 points. In 284.4, you're defining the powers of the library board, and 284.5, you're removing supervision of the library and museum director. She does have 2 titles from the library board and granting it to the town manager. But the wording of the revision question purposely obscures the real intent, which is to place the library and museum director under the town manager. It's not written to inform, but to confuse. It's cumbersome and lengthy. Most people won't read the whole thing. And if they do, they will have difficulty understanding the message. Also, from a legal standpoint, you normally will define the term prior to its use. The wording, you use the term library director in section 284.4, but you don't define the term until section 284.5, which today I've been writing a few things and I always define my terms prior to usage. So it's a little bit of bad form, and I would suggest that you make the change to the library and museum director in 284.4 instead of 284.5. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi.
My name's Loretta Giddix. I live at 34 Red Oak Drive in Southington. I'm here about the rent, but I wanted to ask a question. Is that okay, about something else? You're talking about the library and building a new library and so forth. Do you know that you have a federal building in town that does have no handicap access?
We do.
Post office?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Well, I have a son and grandson both in the military, and those chocolate chip cookie boxes are hard to carry up those stairs with a cane. So I go to Plainville, but just to look at. Anyway, with the rent, I want to thank you first for your time and hopefully your attention, your kind and hopefully speedy attention to forming the commission. I heard some of it, but has it been decided how you're going to pick the people on the commission? Have you gotten that far?
We have not.
No,
We're still
okay.
doing the makeup.
Okay. Well, New York has had rent control for a very long time, and they're very good at it. So maybe we could look at what they've done. They've just passed a law to put a cap on rent to modular and mobile homes, and that's what we would like to see. But with new rents coming in, some people will have their rents given to them in November for next year. And we're looking at a lot. If they do it by the cost of living, which is 9%, that's a lot of money for all these people, a lot of money. So hopefully you can do it quickly. If you need help researching some of these other cities or towns, there's a lot of us that will help. If we can give you more information to help you get it done quicker, we'll be glad to do that. So we're all here. We care, and we vote. Thank you.
Yeah. Hang on one second, Regina. We're going to get you, but Paul does have a comment about the post office.
Excuse me, I didn't get your name. I apologize, Loretta. I did have a previous discussion with the postmaster at the main post office a few times. He has committed to providing handicap service at the post office. They can't change the steps because it's a federal building and it has something to do with the grandfather clause with federal buildings. But he did say he was going to make a parking spot in the back with a sign out front for people who have a need that they can park in back, and there's going to be a phone number that they can dial and get somebody to come out and help them. So we're going to continue to push on that. So, okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Thank you, Regina.
I actually wanted to see if anyone else, wanted to talk, so that way if they wanted to go, I'm more than welcome to let you talk first, okay? No? Okay. Just making sure. I figured I'd help you guys out. Regina Colviello, 12 Beecher Street. As a lifelong resident of Southington, I would like to ask for things to change in town. I don't care what your religion, gender, or politics are. I have seen so many people lose family and friends over the issues. I was brought up to treat people the way you want to be treated. We have to start treating each other better. We need to stop hurting each other. We all hear different opinions on everything, but we have to respect each other. We teach our children to respect people. How are they supposed to do that if the adults of this town don't respect each other? With that being said, all the officials that represent this town need to start showing respect to each other. If you have issues with each other, leave it at the door. Town meetings are about the town, not your personal agendas. Stop arguing with each other and stop representing everyone in this town. The reason I'm saying all this is because it seems like at every meeting, this one is actually pretty good, issues with each other. In fact, after the last meeting, I was in the parking lot talking to a few of the people. And the next thing I know, we see members of this town council screaming at each other in the parking lot. This should have been left at the door at your executive session. It was so unprofessional. If you can't work together, how are we going to help this town? If we can't live up to our nickname, City of Progress, then maybe we should change it. Thank you.
Hey, Chris.
Kurt Hollis, 1 Sawmill Lane in Plantsville. Came here today to hear what we were going to talk about with the strike committee. People out there, the strike committee is set up for economic development in your community so that we can enhance the tax base of our community, so that we can lower the taxes or keep your taxes of the elderly low. We brushed over this very fastly by saying there were no applicants that were acceptable. I happened to be at that strike committee. Unanimously, there was one that was presented that was accepted, but yet we brushed it by. for political reasons is my guess. So we brushed by a potential project that the state of Connecticut may have given $500,000 to develop property in the state of, in the town of Southington, which had the potential of bringing a tremendous amount of tax revenue to this town so that your taxes don't go up next year because you offset increases in taxes by increasing development in the industrial, your commercial. Those are the people paying the large portion of your taxes. We brushed right over it. Strike committee, no possible person. Unanimously, it was accepted in the strike committee. How could you sit there and say there's nothing going on when everybody there voted to present it? If you wanted to shoot it down here, then you could have shot it down. But for political reasons, this was shot down because the individuals that have the majority here didn't want to see it go through because of who the owner was. Plain and simple. There is no, your economic developer has spent years with me. It's me who applied for it. Years trying to find a site to bring these people in to invest in your community, to raise your taxes. This would have reduced all traffic flow on Curtis Street to that property. It will eventually get developed, but there would have been no traffic. It would have gone straight through Lazy Lane, we were hoped, connected to Curtis Street, eliminating traffic to Curtis Street that people didn't want, and increasing a massive amount of taxes to you. I'm just very disappointed that we spent no time talking about it. None. We blew by it. Ridiculous that we could blow by something so important as economic development. When all these people come, because their rates went up $25, can you imagine the amount of taxes that are going to go up too? Here's something that's set up by the state to build your tax base. And these people say there's none. You could have denied it at least, but don't tell me there was none. That's an insult to me, that there was none. When we sat in there and you told me and everyone said, yes, this sounds like a great idea, and you come out here in front of the public and you say there was no viable. Was there a viable? Yes, there was a viable. Disgraceful that we could say there wasn't. Lady just said political reasons on why we do things. It's unfathomable. That's all I have to say is that you people, when you go vote, understand who you're voting for. It's not D or an R. Vote for a person that has integrity. Not just, hey, he's got a D next to his name. He's got an R next to him. He's no good because he's a Democrat. He's no good because he's a Republican. There's great Republicans, there's state, just have self-need. I just hope that you guys all go out there and vote next election and you pick not an R, not a D, but people that care about your future, because it's your grandkids, your kids that are going to pay high taxes. Inflation is through the roof. You're going to see mill rates climb and stuff like that. And that's what this was set up, was to bring tax dollars to your community so you don't have an increase in your not only your rent go up, your taxes are going to go up too. Thank you.
Good evening, Katie Wade, 39 Madeline Lane. At the July 11th meeting, the council voted to award trash removal contracts. Before the vote took place, Chairperson Triano asked if there was any discussion, and Councilman Perry shared his view that the scope of these contracts could be changed, resulting in a savings of over $35,000 for our town. As both he and later Councilperson Lombardi noted, this is Mr. Perry's area of expertise. He made a motion not to reject these contracts, but simply to table the vote and have further discussion. I understand from the council's reactions that you prefer more granular discussions to take place outside of council meetings, which tabling the vote would have allowed. Councilperson Morelli said that concerns should be raised before things come to the council for a vote. And that he didn't think the council should be debating it during the meeting. This is perhaps the norm you follow, but it's certainly not a rule that I could find. And again, this was an effort to save the town tens of thousands of dollars. Mr. Morelli also said that this wasn't the time to discuss it because the council is here to do a job for the town, which undoubtedly you are. But that seems untethered from his previous comments. When presented with new and pertinent information, taking the time to have a discussion that could potentially save taxpayer money is part of the job, even if the discussion is outside your preferred channels, even if you don't like how the information is presented. As a taxpayer, I just expect due diligence to be taken before town money is spent. Perhaps $35,000 doesn't seem like a lot of money, but considering this council recently voted to cut $500,000 from our school's level service budget, I find it infuriating, as did other parents. I've spoken here before about the things our school budget does not cover: books, bookshelves, property maintenance, etc. Today, I purchased items for Southington classrooms off of Amazon wish lists that teachers have set up. Parents in this town are now having conversations about whether there are rules that would prevent us from fundraising for staff positions at our children's schools. Because part of what Southington students lost in that cut was over a dozen para-educator positions. This has an impact on our children's classrooms. Do you know what Southington pays para-educators? Because I checked the contract and they start at $18.36 per hour. So if they work all day, $35,000 would cover almost 3 positions for the school year. I'd like to remind the majority party on this council that you're in a strong position. You give away nothing when you take the time to listen, but it can cost Southington when you choose not to. So thank you for the time you devote to this town, and thank you for your attention this evening.
Thank you. My name is Nathan Wright. I'm at 1070 Marion Avenue in Plantsville. I just wanted to reiterate some of the comments that I made at the library board committee meeting a couple days ago. And again, like I'm certainly not an expert on library issues or construction issues. And the extent of the research that I did probably consisted of talking to a lot of people while walking around town and reading the rather well done PowerPoint presentation that was on the library board website, along with a video accompaniment of it. And my sort of memory of what I read and what I learned and what led me to vote yes on the referendum was that there was a recognition of a lot of things in our town, the ADA compliance being one of them, the quality of the construction and the sinkhole and the pictures and news articles from whenever it was built talking about that sinkhole. But more than all of that was the acknowledgement that libraries have changed and we need more spaces. We need more gathering spaces. We need places where I remember reading about like quiet little areas where people could work together, or larger areas where people could like frolic together or play games together. Maybe that's just what I pictured in my mind when I was reading it, but I was just kept seeing like different size spaces, like different purpose spaces. But that was only part of what I remember reading there. I remember reading that there was a study done about the circulation and how we were having a lot of visitors to our library from the town of Southington, but virtually no one from any other town, which was very different from the way some of our surrounding towns were seeing guests come in. And the idea was kind of put out there, wouldn't it be nice if we had a library that drew people in, that had people come visit our town, go to our businesses, like eat at our restaurants, shop at our stores, but come to Southington. And there was a third piece that I remember from that where it was talking about the size of our collection and how the size of our collection on a per capita basis was significantly smaller, if not like one of the smallest in the state, and how we really needed more space to have a larger collection. So that's, so I read all of that. I filed it in the back of my head. I thought myself about why it is that I choose to go to the Cheshire Library, and it's partly because it's open Saturdays, and that's when I'm free. That's when I'm free and able to take my kids to the library. It's partly because of the spaces and the way that my kids are able to go out and play, and it's partly because of just especially in the children's section, the sheer volumes of books and knowing that my kids can just go to any bookshelf and grab a handful of books and be happy with them at least for 2 or 3 days until we have to go back. And so I was surprised, like when I came to that meeting and saw that there was a strong memory about the spaces, but it seemed to not be a strong memory about the size of our collection and how how the size that we have now isn't currently meeting like our needs, and how, at least at the time that proposal was developed, there was a real thought behind what is the size of the library that we are going to need for the future. Not what is the size we need right now, but how do we prevent ourselves from 30 or 40 or 50 years from now, not looking at like, wow, we really missed that opportunity there. I enjoyed the presentation from the architects. I think they did a phenomenal job. I think in terms of making a building aesthetically pleasing that people will be proud of and happy and potentially draw people into Southington, I think they nailed it right out of the park. But the two presentations for me were asking us, and they were asking the library board to make a choice right then and there of decreasing the number of books we have and providing the gathering spaces, or cutting back on some of the gathering spaces and keeping the size of collection, let alone like leaving space to increase the collection. And that to me that's a big choice. Like, that's impacting like how that library is going to be used for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And that's why I really think that, this is something that's big. This is something that we could go back and ask people for. At the very least, we want to know, like, where does the town stand? Do we want to have more space for gathering? Do we want to have more space for books? Do we want to have both? And if it's both, are we willing to put our money behind that? So I am in favor, and I hope that we will have more public hearings to talk about what those two very different directions would look like. I do think that the idea of having a referendum, if we decide that we want to go with both, I think we could do that referendum. I think it could be off cycle. We've had off cycle referendums before. And I just encourage everyone, again, like the wise gentleman said before me, to really think about it and to really think about what's right for the town and to listen to the town before you make the decision. Thank you very much. And thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak tonight? Last call. Anyone else wishing to speak? We're going to close public communication. Thank you all for your comments, and we learned to go, so we appreciate them all. Okay, so let's move on to old business action. Item A, the action on the report of the Board of Finance. We're going to just take a minute because folks are leaving, so we want to be able to hear everybody. Let's just wait 1 minute, council.
That woman didn't even speak.
She interrupted the meeting, then she left. Didn't even say anything.
Yeah, I thought she was going to talk.
Ridiculous.
All right, I think we're okay. Let's try again. Action on item A, report of the Board of Finance.
So move, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second, Madam Chair.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Madam Clerk, call the roll for the report, please.
Del Santo,
Yes.
DiPaolo,
Yes.
Lombardi,
Yes.
Morelli,
Yes.
Palmieri,
Yes.
Perry,
Yes.
Chaplinsky,
Yes.
Triano.
Yes. Item B, action.
One second.
Okay.
Going to recuse myself, Madam Chair.
Oh,
Under the Zanesville parking lot.
all it is exercise. You just walk down, we do come back. Item B, action on the Planceville parking lot.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have any discussion on the Planceville parking lot? Jack?
Madam Chair, so again, I'm going to be voting no this evening on this, just for the simple fact that I'm not in favor of the lease that our town signed. It's only a 20-year lease, and we're looking at our town library right now, which is 50 years old. So in 20 years from now, we're not going to have a parking lot, so we're going to go backwards in time. And there's a council person that's going to have reserved parking spaces in this parking spot and in this parking lot. And I just, again, just for transparency purposes, I just don't think it's in the best interest of the town.
Okay, very good. Anybody else wish to speak? Yes, Tom?
Well, I understand Mr. Perry's concerns. I think that this is independent of his concerns, because we previously approved the lease for this facility. And now we're just saying, okay, now that we have a lease in place, we need to fix it and bring it up to standards. I think if you're going to make a no vote on this, you could raise the issue of maybe not using the Easy IQ system and maybe going out to traditional bid. We've heard that argument before, but I think Mr. Perry, I think we as a council, once we have assets in our possession as town leaders, we have to make decisions on whether we want to upgrade or just leave it a dirt lot. And I think in this instance, we have no choice but to bring the parking down there and bring it up to standard. We've heard for years and years that there's not a lot of parking in Southington or in Plantsville down there. And unfortunately, it's an expensive solution to the problem. So I'll be voting in favor of it, although it is a hefty price tag. But hopefully, this helps the downtown area for the future.
And Madam Chair, if I may.
Plantsville downtown area, I should say.
It is disingenuous to mention one person who recuses themselves, Jack. So if we're going to use politics and start calling council members out who may have a conflict, let's be fair about it. Because there's one person who is not here and one person recusing themselves. I think it's completely inappropriate to use the dais to call out and claim politics when you have no evidence of that. It's not fair.
Is there anyone else that
Yeah,
wishes to
Madam
speak?
Chair, Madam Chair, I'd like to go off that. So again, so what's happening here, and again, I tried thinking long-term and what's best for our community. So now we have a parking lot that is going to be deeded to a certain individual at the end. And now all the real estate, again, parking is needed down there. And without parking, your property is kind of valueless. So again, I think this is setting up that, again, the real estate, if you don't own a parking lot down there, and in 20 years, you won't have access to a parking lot. And the first 20 years, there's 7 spaces that are allocated, which I believe 20%. So again, if we're going to do what's best for the town, I think that there should have been cost sharing on this as well. So again, I'm not going to beat this, but we talked lengthily about this lease that we entered, and I had a concern about the price then, and that's why I'm voting no tonight. Thank you.
My comment, Madam Chair, if I may, my comment is not that somebody's involved. What I'm suggesting to Mr. Perry is if he's going to mention one council person who has a conflict, he should mention the other. I don't think you should play politics in this. There are 2 people who have who are involved in this. One is indirect and one is direct. I just find it disingenuous that you would use the dais to bring that up. And this was something that the town of Southington approached the 2 owners on. The town of Southington made a commitment years ago before this owner was even involved in that property. We made a commitment to the voters of Southington, the residents of Southington, Plantsville, that we were going to bring parking down there. I was just down there yesterday. I almost got killed in Plantsville Center, getting out of my vehicle in the middle of town because the traffic is so tight there. We need off-site parking. This is a great opportunity for us to do that.
Okay, I'm going to just move the motion. I don't think there's any other further discussion on it. Let's just move the motion. Would you call the roll, please, Kathy?
Del Santo.
Yes.
Lombardi.
Yes.
Morelli.
Yes.
Palmieri.
No.
Perry.
No.
Chaplinsky.
Yes.
Triano.
Yes. Item C, action on the leaf barn ceiling repair recommendation.
I'd like to make a motion to award the Leaf Barn roof ceiling repairs to Millennium Builders at a cost not to exceed $14,185.70.
I'll second.
You
Madam
have a
Chair.
second on it. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I think we should call the roll on this also.
Del Santo.
Yes.
Paulo.
Yes.
Lombardi.
Yes.
Morelli.
Yes.
Palmieri.
Yes.
Perry.
Yes.
Chaplinsky.
Yes.
Triano.
Yes. Item D, action on the school access walks.
Manhole first.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had manhole at item G. I'm sorry.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to award the bid for the sewer project to Duke's, is it Root Control?
Root controlling.
Duke's Root Control at the price of $145 a manhole or $41,120, which will come from the sewer maintenance fund.
I'll second that, Madam.
Okay, is there any discussion? Hearing none, would you call the roll, please?
Del Santo.
Yes.
DiPaolo.
Yes.
Lombardi.
Yes.
Morelli.
Yes.
Palmieri.
Yes.
Perry.
Yes.
Chaplinsky.
Yes.
Triano.
Item passes unanimously. Action on item D, school access walks. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the actions as outlined in the memorandum from the Director of Public Works to the Town Manager to turn over the school access walks on Mulberry Street and South End Road or on Parkview Drive, as outlined in the memo.
Very good. Do I have a second?
A second, Madam Chair.
Any further discussion on this matter?
Just again to note here during the actual motion, I want to be clear that homeowners are communicated directly to
Yes, I agree.
about the impact it will have on their homes.
And that
And
should
also
go out.
contingent upon the town obviously bringing the property up to standards.
Absolutely.
In communication by letter, maybe?
Yeah, I would like to see that.
Yes.
Standard letter to
We still do letters, right?
Snail mails? Can you get a stamp?
Let's move this motion.
Do we have a second?
Yeah, a second.
We have a second. And would you call the roll, please, clerk?
Del Santo?
Yes.
DiPaolo? Yes. Marty?
Yes.
Morelli?
Yes.
Palmieri?
Yes.
Perry?
Yes.
Chaplinsky?
Yes.
Triano?
Yes. Item E, action on the charter revision question. Have a motion.
I'll make that motion, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mike. A second?
Second.
Second, Jim. Any discussion?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to mention a couple things on this.
Certainly.
So I know Alicia Novi did speak about it, and I do agree with what she's saying. I'm going to be a no vote on this, but in looking at the question, just for consistency's sake, I do think it's important to have Board of Directors of the Southington Public Library and Museum, and the Southington Public Library and Museum in both spots.
Which you've already declared you're gonna vote against it. Is that what you're
Well, I'm
saying?
going to vote no on it, but I know it's going to, you have the votes to pass it. So, just for clarity purposes for the residents, they should be
Chair,
clear
just-
that it's.
So Val, just to interrupt you, but sorry to interrupt you, but could we add, I mean, I don't have a problem with adding that. Could
I
we
don't
add
know
that? I
what
don't know
the
legally,
procedure
can
is
we
at
do
this
that?
I would defer to our town attorney.
So it's the state statute says you need to approve the question, vote on the question. So if someone wants to amend the question on the fly, you can change it to Southington Public Library and Museum without a problem right now. We'll just
Museum
adjust
director.
that. And this is a formality because the state of Connecticut is actually going to be the final approval authority based upon the charter ordinance that was preliminary approved and this question. So this is you're just sending this to the state. The state's going to sign off.
Okay, very good. I'd like to have was that a motion to amend the?
Do you have a motion on the?
You can
what
make
did
you can make a
Yeah.
I have a question.
Well,
on
let
that
her-
first.
Okay, wait a minute.
Al should finish
Let's have
first.
let's have a motion on it.
I have a question
And a
though,
second.
on that before we motion.
Well, I just wanted to make a couple other points, but
Let's let her finish.
yeah, is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. And I do think that, the crux of the charter revision amendment was really about the position of the library and museum director. And the way the question is worded, it's basically defining the role of the library board of directors and the role of the town manager. I understand that. I understand why that's being done. I think it would be much clearer for residents, and I don't know that there's a lot of transparency here, if the question could be broken into two sections where you talk about there's a change to, specific section, I want to say 284-3, what is the role of the library board? And then 284-5, now the town manager is the person that will be overseeing the library director. So, I'm just looking at the overall question. I'm kind of looking at being transparent with the residents so that they have an understanding when they read this question, what was the intent, of the amendment to the charter.
Okay. Anyone else have anything to say? Go ahead.
I just have a question to Val or anybody else on the first one. I think it's a good idea if clarity requires Southington Public Library and Museum. One question I would have is, God forbid, what would happen if the museum didn't exist 20 years down the road from now? Would that be an issue for us if it said library and museum? or if it said library and museum and for example, the museum didn't exist, future councils or something. I'm not saying that's
You
going
can-
to happen.
you can
but
amend
is it
it,
okay to, is it okay to still have that
Well, you
there,
can-
Alex?
But you can say the same thing, Paul, is right now you're saying Southington Public Library, but there's also a museum, and the library board of directors oversees that, and the town manager now will oversee Southington Library and Museum. So
Right.
you can just flip that. So that's just for consistency purposes. In the charter language, that's why I had asked for in the charter language that everything should be consistent. Board of Directors of the Public Library and Museum, the library and museum director. Because I think it just needs to be very clear for the residents that this encompasses the library and the museum. And now the role of the library board is what it is, and the role of the town manager is what it is.
That's why I'd like to take each one of these individually, because I think that now there's a second one that you have. Is there a third one also? Or-
No, it's,
Okay.
those
I
are the
would like
two,
to
those are the two main ones.
I'd like to vote on each one individually, if that's what you would like to present. And then we can go from there. Is that, yeah?
Can I get
Well, wait a-
can I
wait
get
a-
the question that I asked
Changing
from the
the
town attorney
The
or the
verbiage.
town manager? If the museum didn't exist, is that a problem?
It'd be the
If it's
same
still
thing
said-
if the library didn't exist. Then it'd still cover the Barnes Museum, but it wouldn't cover the library. It doesn't make a difference.
So it shouldn't be a risk for us to put it in there.
at all.
I think it's a good idea.
Subset of library?
Yes.
Isn't it under the library?
Right now it is, yes.
So would it
The
be
Barnes
assumed?
Trust says it has to be under the board of directors of the library. Has the programming, and we vetted that with the trust officer. Proposed language is an agreement, but the trust itself says that there has to be oversight from the board of directors.
There should be no issue with adding that language if you want.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I think, but I would like to have a motion for the first part that Val presented with the language. And then we can talk more about, if you want to make a motion on the second part that you presented, Val, that would be fine. Would you like to make a motion for the change of the first part of what you said for clarification?
You mean the Southington Library and Museum?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. Is there a second to that?
I'll second that, Madam Chair.
Okay. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Just for
So-
clarification, it's the second line.
Yep.
It would say Board of Directors of the Southington Public Library and Museum. And then the last line would say, and collective bargaining of the Southington Public Library and museum operations.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's correct, I believe, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So Madam Clerk, would you call the roll on this motion?
Del Santo,
Yes.
DePello,
Yes.
Lombardi,
Yes.
Morelli,
Yes.
Palmieri,
Yes.
Perry,
Yes.
Chaplinsky,
Yes.
Triano.
Yes. Now for
And,
this-
and Madam Chairwoman, just to clarify, that's three changes, Southington Public Library and Museum to 3 spots. Is that everybody's understanding of what was voted on?
Yes,
And museum.
I believe that is
Yeah,
correct.
3 spots. 3 spots.
3 spots?
3 spots.
Mm-hmm. Yes, 3 spots. Okay. Val, did you want to make a motion on the second part of your question, your offering?
Well, the second part of it would be, I think the town attorney had mentioned that he and the town clerk had structured the question, right? So I don't know if it would go back to you to prepare something that would be more in line with what the discussion was.
We are at a time delay on this one though, because your next meeting is until the 12th of September.
Yep.
So I would suggest that you do what you have to do tonight, because Kathy then has to
Question,
get.
September 8th is when the
Right.
question has to be to the state
So we have to
for
get to the Secretary
approval.
of State by the 8th. So if you could do what you need to do tonight, whatever you went and vote, if we could have the final vote tonight, Kathy can then do her thing.
Okay.
I'll make a comment. Okay.
So I would say
We currently stand with that language as amended.
Yeah.
So I guess what I would say is I'd like to see it in two, I mean, I can't do it just this quickly, trying to, with all the language, but I guess I would like to see it in two parts. That it would look at specifically section 284-3, that the responsibility that the Southington Public Library and the Board of Directors of the Southington Public Library and Museum would be responsible for the activities, programming, materials, and usage policies of the Southington Public Library and Museum. So that would be section 284-3. And then that section 284-5 would be amended to reflect that the town manager may appoint and employ a library and museum director. And you can use the language from the exhibit from the Charter Revision Commission. Who shall be responsible for overseeing the daily operation of the library and Barnes Museum. And then if you want to go further, Alex, to say that the town manager shall also be responsible for management of staffing, finances, building operations, and collective bargaining of the Southington Public Library and Museum operations. But I think it's important to put in there for section 284-5 that the town manager may employ the library and museum, because that was the intent. That was a lot of the discussion of the charter revision.
Can I ask a question, Madam Chair?
Yeah, sure.
Val, I'm sorry, you got to help me understand. How is that different than what's listed now?
It's spelling out, I think what it's doing is it's pointing residents in the direction that the big change was the library director position. That's it. It's the way it's written is it's showing the responsibility, the role of the board of directors and the role of the town manager. But when you really look at what, so many of the discussions focused on the library director, who, that was the confusion.
Well, who the library director answers to.
Like who,
Correct.
and that's been confusion for a long
Right.
time, right? So that seemed to be the issue.
So I guess my question is, not to ruin your train of thought, but what's different than what's there now? What changed?
We're not making it specific. So if a resident comes in and reads the question, would they have checked, they would have to go through the minutes of meetings and get some history to know, the big change is the library director is now reporting to
Directly reports to the town
directly
manager.
reporting to the town manager. I mean, that's a big difference, right? With many libraries, you have your library director report to their board.
Yeah.
And so
okay, I think.
So that's what I'm trying to do is to get
I
that.
see where you're going. So I think you've made the motion then. Did you make a motion?
No,
Motion on the table, I think we should have. Madam Chair, I think the town, I'd like to make sure that the town attorney has the actual language written and can recite what Val said, because
I'm confused too.
a little confused. So I just want to make sure that we have it.
I only have written what was last voted on. If someone wants to literally call it out, I'll write it down as we go. I'm more than happy to do that.
Is there any issues making changes to those, Alex? No.
Right now, I have the AM Museum 3 times changed. If people want to suggest, I need a specific change. I need say add this here, remove this here, and I can do that right now.
So I'm sorry, Val.
No, go ahead. I think
Because I want to make sure we get this right. Should we have Val restate what she wants to do and maybe have you type it up and then read it back to us specifically exactly what's being proposed here? I'm just concerned that nobody has this formally documented, all the things that she said, so that we can vote on it.
I can do that. If she wants to read it out, I will write it down and repeat it if that's what you're looking for. But I'm not sure if that's what you're looking for.
Can I just make another comment? Part of my concern, I think this is part of where your concern is coming from, just echoing some of the concerns that we had throughout the process with the charter revision, in that we're removing authority from 9 members and giving it solely to one person. So again, I mentioned this in the past. I think back to failed charter revision issues that have come up in the past with the police and fire, and it was similar in nature, that it would put this under the control of the town manager versus a board. That's my concern. I think that's part of the concern.
It's not the board that I'm concerned with, Chris. It's the state I'm concerned with. We need local control of the library.
I understand, but I'm just saying my concern is that this would take away the authority of the library board over the director and put it with the town manager.
Right.
That's,
So,
I think it defines.
Can I make a comment?
It actually
And
defines it.
Councilman Palmeri's point, that's fine to feel that way. But we're voting on the question this evening, and I read this question as totally fine. This is clear. And what Councilman Palmeri just said is that he would be a no vote on this question, which that's your opinion. But in terms of the question, I think it's very clear. And the real confusion has lied for years and years and years. And even the library director got up here and said that she is looking for clarity, and this is the clarity that she would want, is that, you know, who's responsible. And it says the town manager to be responsible for management of staffing. And the town manager's director, the library director, she's the manager of the staffing. So I'm not sure. I personally don't see any confusion with the way that it's written with Council DiPaolo's amendments. So I'm willing to vote on it as is, and then if you want to take an opinion on the question, that's what the voters will do in November. But
And Madam Chair, if I can add on to that, the library board had representation here. I know. So you're saying, Chris, that you're concerned that the library board is losing powers. I would offer that, number one, our charter doesn't really define what the powers are of the library board or the town manager. So number one, this is really defining it because it's just not there. Nowhere in our current charter does it say what those duties are for each of those people. So number one, we're defining it. So that's a positive thing that we're clarifying. Number two, I think your disagreement is where the powers lie. Your concern is for the board of directors, but we had the board of directors here telling us that they supported this. So they themselves, the head of the board of directors, speaking on behalf of them, said this is a good thing. And I heard it at the charter revision meetings as well.
what I'm saying is some of the concern we heard tonight, the concern that I think, partly is what Val's raising, and the concern I personally mentioned the last time and heard mentioned at the charter revision meetings that I attended was that. So I'm just sharing my own personal belief, and I have to ultimately vote on this, so I'm not going to be voting to support it for those reasons. That's
But
fine.
you wouldn't support it even if we changed the language.
Right, because I think there is still confusion, which is also what was mentioned by the speaker.
So there's really no point in us even going any further. So,
Madam Chair, I'd
come
like
on,
to
Greg.
say a couple things about this. So again, when I read this question, and I'm going to read it so that the audience could hear it as well. The charter question is, shall the Chapter 284 of the Southington Town Charter be amended to permit the Board of Directors of the Southington Public Library to be responsible for the activities, programs, materials, and usage policies of the Southington Library, and the town manager to be responsible for the management of staffing, finances, building operations, collective bargaining of the Southington Public Library operations? Residents, again, when they read that, they're not going to know what that means. They don't understand what our current operation is. So
It's very clear what's going forward.
Madam Chair, hang on, I have the floor. So,
yeah,
so again, when you're reading this, it just says, hey, shall this be this way? It doesn't really give a clear way of how it is now and how, again, the director. So I understand what Chris and Val are trying to say. So you guys are confused on what they were trying to say. Now we have voters trying to go vote for this, and we can't even get this language right. That it's not as confusing. So again, it's just going to be doing a disservice to people that they're going to be guessing or maybe not even answering this question because it doesn't state the way that it is now. So it's not like saying, hey, we're going to move from this to this. It's just saying, shall we do this? And it doesn't really say what we currently are doing.
Madam Chair, I would I would agree with Councilman Perry's assertion that it doesn't state anything. On my phone, I look at the town charter for the library. It fits in the palm of my hand. There's nothing there. There's literally nothing. And if it helps, Jack, maybe what we could do is print a copy at the polling stations and put a few copies at the polling stations of the current charter, so people can see what the current charter is, and they can see that it's pretty much blank. There's almost nothing in there. And there says nothing about the duties and responsibilities of the boards or the town manager. I would be happy if that would help if we put, because you're saying that people don't know the point of departure. I think we should put copies of that there so they can read it going in.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. And I think, again, we would just say, hey, what the current structure is and how it is. And again, precedent is what we're currently doing. And what's happening is we are, again, taking some authority from a board of directors as appointed by the council, and indirectly, we want to have control of it.
I agree.
So what's happening here is we appoint people on the library board of directors that, again, are going to do what's right. And instead, we're taking some of their powers away, and we're funneling it through Mark, which we control Mark. So again, I just don't think this is part of a democracy. I like having other people to have the say. We shouldn't be controlling everything. And when we're appointing people to these subcommittees, we should be picking the right people for that, and we should entrust them. And we should not be micromanaging. That is it.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
there
please.
needs to be clarification. And the library director came up here and spoke, and many people. The confusion doesn't lie what the board of directors at the local level. Nobody knows whether the library director reports to the state or the town board of directors or the town manager. There's all kinds of confusion, Mr. Perry. So there needs to be clarity. And to your point of how the current structure is now, I want to get that information as well. And library boards of today and the past have been looking for that, and nobody's been able to provide an answer. So the main issue is not between local control and the town manager control. It's really between the state and the multiple aspects of local government. So I think that putting this to align with other town departments is totally, I'll be voting at the polls in November as a yes, but let's focus on tonight. This is just a question of putting it before the voters.
And
Let's
Madam
not
Chair,
get caught up in our personal
Not the
opinions.
question to put it forward. You already voted to put it in front of the voters.
Right.
This is the actual worded.
The wording that's going to go on the
state.
ballot.
Tommy,
So I think
just
we need to stay
remember,
focused.
we're not allowed to put anything but a question on there. So there is only a question that we can put on the charter revision. So we actually have to form this in the form of a question. We can't say, here's a book on the ballot, here's all the details behind this, but we can put some information at the polling station so that people can review it before they go and vote. And we have to also remember, the Planning and Zoning Commission doesn't hire and fire and reprimand the zoning board. The board of finance doesn't hire and fire the finance director. The other boards in our community don't. The open space doesn't hire and fire the staff member on the open space. This is consistent with almost every other board except the two safety boards. And those safety boards are there because of, they're in the model that they're in because of safety and the safety of the people in our community. So they have a different standard, which is not uncommon in many other communities. So this is very consistent. I
forget where the motion is. I
Madam
think we
Chair,
need to move the
I won't
motion.
make a motion.
Okay.
Okay, then I'm going to make a motion. I'm going to make a motion.
Make a
Just for
motion.
clarity, the motion that's in front of you is the amended motion, which includes Val's language,
Correct.
which the town attorney has.
Yeah.
Correct.
That motion is in front of you. It's been seconded, and so it could be voted on
So we
anytime.
need
you
to
Has it
want.
been? Who has the first and second for clarification?
That was just,
Tom voted on that.
we voted on
We
that.
voted on
We
that.
already voted on that. That's
We
already
voted on the
approved.
Right, but
amendment.
Just
you need, now,
just the-
now you need, you
Now I'll
amended
make a
it.
motion.
Now you make a motion to approve as amended.
The amended,
Just the
Oh,
words, right?
Val amended it,
Oh, the amendment,
Yeah.
yes, the amendment.
and
We voted.
I seconded
I'm
the
seconding
amendment.
that.
Now we need a motion to
that
move
was
it
to
forward.
amend the.
I'll make the motion to move the motion, the question forward as listed with Val's.
the amended motion.
And I'll second that.
And just for clarification, that we were adding the Ann Museum
That's right.
Right.
Yes.
to those three spots. Two of them are in the question of the charter revision, and one of them is outside the question. Is that correct?
No, all three are. in the question.
Can we just for make sure we get it on the record? Where is the three spots that we're adding the
I'm going, well, Mr. Perry read it, but I'll read it the whole thing. Shall Chapter 284 of the Sullyton Town Charter be amended to permit the Board of Directors of the Sullyton Public Library and museum to be responsible for the activities, programming, materials, and usage policies of the Southington Public Library and Museum, and the town manager to be responsible for management of staffing, finances, building operations, and collective bargaining of the Southington Public Library and Museum operations, ?
That's it.
Thank
Del Santo.
My motion.
And I second.
Okay.
And I seconded.
All right.
Okay, so Del Santo made the motion.
Thanks for the
Tommy seconded
suggestions.
it. Let's take the roll.
Del Santo,
Yes.
DePaul,
No?
Lombardi,
Yes.
Morelli,
Yes.
Palmieri,
No.
Harry,
No.
Chaplinsky,
Yes.
Triano.
Yes, of course. All right, very good. Right now, for our open space, item G.
Item,
I'm sorry, item F.
is it
right.
F or G?
It's G.
G.
Sorry, I closed my stuff. Item G, the 824 proposed open space for Burt Street contract.
I'll make a motion to approve sending that to planning and zoning for 824 referral.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, let's move on to appointments. And we have Cable Advisory Council, 2 members. They are both Republican. Mike, do you have their
I
names?
do. We were asking to put Mr. Robert Tonin and Mr. Rusty Haig for those 2 positions. Yes.
Are those your appointments?
Those are chair.
No, they're council
Motions?
appointments.
Okay.
Motion.
All right, so I make a motion to add Mr. Tonin and Mr. Haig.
I'll
to the
second.
Cable Advisory Board.
I'll second that,
Yeah,
Madam Chair.
second, yeah. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes unanimously. Thank you, everybody.
I make a
Long-
motion to
Yes, indeed. All those in favor to adjourn?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. It was a long meeting. Thank you so much for your input.
Who seconded?
Don't even talk.